Hello everybody, thank you for joining me for the hands class. So today we've got quite a busy class ahead of us. But first things first, if you're not super confident with your shadings yet, then rather carry on practicing with the portraits and the other classes. The rose class is also a good one to give you a good practice with the shadings, because when we're doing hands you need to be super confident with your shadings, because there are really fine differences that you need to be able to spot and draw. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at our hands. So you better get your hands ready so that you can have a good spy at them. Alright, so I think let's go over to here. Let's just flip that guy over so we've got a blank canvas to work from. Alrighty. When drawing your hands, it's really important to keep your wits about you and to realize whereabouts are you on your hand. Because I think you'll agree with me, the biggest thing with drawing hands is that at every single thing is at its own unique angle. And then obviously, because of those different angles and then the padding on your hand, you've got different shadings at different places. So if you take a look at the back of your hand, it's pretty flat. If I turn it like that, look there, it's flat. You know, there's no padding or fat or anything over there. It's pretty flat. The minute you get to the inside of your hand, though, here you've got in all these what do you call them? Limbs, or what do you want to call them? All the little pieces you've got padding on them to protect your hand when you're working with things. So needless to say, you've got distinct with each little limb. You've got a distinct little bit of padding there. Now each one of them forms its own little sort of highlight and its own little shadow going through to each side. So you can think of this as a little bit of a tube, and there's a tube, there's a tube. So I think what we can try and do is to get a feel for those different angles. Is what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down each finger. Let's do that. So I'm just drawing a line down the center, and yes, this is a permanent marker. I hope it comes off within the next week. Okay, so let's do that, and let's do my thumb as well while we're at it. Hopefully that's down the center. Okay, so if I keep my hand stretched out straight, my fingers stretched, my lines are straight, but the minute I curl them, look what happens. Look at all these different angles. 1, 2, 3. And now, because of the padding, now you can really start to see quite nicely. Look at the rounding. Can you see that? And it's those roundings that you need to draw. Then, the minute if you're looking at your hand like this, it's still reasonably simple, because you can almost take this guy as a one long tube with a few little humps and bumps in it. Now look what happens when I turn my hand. You see, the one starts getting hidden, becoming hidden by the other one. Now take a look, for example, over here. Turn it back again. You see, it's got lovely sunlight. The minute I turn him, look what happens. This guy starts casting a shadow on that one. So it gets darker and darker. Can you see that? Getting darker and darker and darker as I turn it. So now suddenly you've got, between this finger and this one here, we've got a found line. You see that? Because it's lighter there and it's darker there. The same thing would happen there. It's lighter here on this finger and darker on that one. And the same there. Can you see that lovely little found line over there? Because this guy has a shadow cast on it because of the other fingers. So just check all those different little angles. The same thing happens over here. You've got padding here. You've got padding there. Let's just move that up. So we've got padding here, here, and here. So you've got a little dip here in the center of your hand. So you'll often have that little dip there will be in shadow. You see that? So you'd have sunlight there, and there's a nice little shadow there in the center. So you've got to look out for all those guys. Then all these little folds and things. You know, if I twist my hand and stuff, I get all sorts of little folds going on. Look over there. And look over here. Get all these little folds. Now, when you're drawing these folds, you'll find that they're very seldom found lines. It's darker in the center, over there, and then it fades lighter that way. And it'll fade lighter that way. So it's seldom a really hard line. Over here as well, even yeah, like by your knuckles, you'll find that although it's a deep line there, it's quite a dark line. It's not actually a found line. It fades to both sides. Alright, so what I've done is I did just take a photo of my hand, just to make it easy for us to reference from. So I just put my hand down on the table and I took a snapshot. I took a selfie of my hand. Alright, so this is what I'm going to draw today. I challenge you to draw your own hand. Now, if you're drawing out something like this, remember those little each little limb on your finger has got its own little shape. So let me just get another scrap piece of paper here. Well, I suppose we can draw directly onto this photo because I won't use this guy as reference. Yeah, I think let's do that. So just to be safe, so the pen doesn't go through to the rest, let's flip those papers around. When you start off just by getting your angles right. That little center line that I drew earlier. Just that. And from there on, you build it into a tube. So I'll go like, get the thickness. That one goes behind there. And then I'll take a look and see how do these two tubes connect to each other. So this one connects to that one there like that. So that's going to give me a curve joining it like that. And that one gives me a curve joining it like that. There I've got a little fold. And this guy will also, he'll join in like that. Now, if you're unsure of these curves over here, you've got your blue tack and you've got your kneaded eraser. So Danielle, yes, lost lines fade away to both sides in this case over here. Let's move that up over there. Okay, so take your kneaded eraser and your blue tack and roll them both into a tube like that, and then just squeeze them together like this. So what happens is now you've got a line there like that. And now you can twist it to the same angle as your finger, and now you can see which direction that little curve is over there. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is obviously you've got two perfectly good models at your disposal 24/7. So curve your hand in the same direction, and then see which direction does that curve. In which direction does that curve go? So that's what you want to do. So that guy goes there, and this guy will go there. Then when it comes to the body of the hand, what I generally do is I think of a box. So I'll do that and that. There's my arm. So I've got a box going out like that. Okay, so there's two more tubes there. And there's another one there. And that last there, yeah, that's all the fingers. That there must be just oh yes, it's this little back piece of your hand over there. That little bump there, that's what it is. Over there. So what you need to do then is now you've got your basics sort of sketched out. Then all you do is take a look. You know the top of your hand is straight. So there you're okay. Here, you know, you need to add padding. So you're going to have this kind of a thing going on. Little curves. Yeah, just take a look, how does it curve? And then now each one of these little tubes, again, remember it doesn't join in a sharp corner. Each one has got its own little curve. And the same thing over here. Here I've got padding, so that straight line needs to round off. There's the other padding, so he also needs to round off. And can you see how you can easily redraw your hand like that? Alright, so when it comes to nails, you need to realize, let's see if we can zoom in here. Let's maybe use another camera, so I'm just quickly setting that guy up. So if we look at your nail isn't flat. It curves the whole time. So even this top part here, it is not flat. Everything is it's flatter here. But the minute you get to there and to there, it curves actually quite quickly. So you can even see just here. Look how much darker it is over here. Here we seem to have one reasonably even tone, and then that guy, as he curls around, he's catching a bit more light, because my light is mostly from this side. And then you've got those little indentations over there, so it's always there where the skin and the nail meet. It's always dark over there. And then take a look, your nail itself is lighter, and what do you call this? The cuticle, that little half moon over there, is also lighter. So you'll find that you'll often have different colors in this area here. So it tend to be darker here and a little bit lighter to there. And then right here, before the tip of your nail, before the actual white of the nail starts, you'll find it actually goes darker. Let's see if we can look at another finger. See there, a little bit darker there, a bit more lighter, slightly darker. Now, obviously, unless you're drawing super close up, don't bother too much about getting this a different color, but make that a shade lighter, and make that a shade or two lighter over there, and then you're good to go, and get that little darkness over there. You need to get that in, because that gives you that looking in effect. And then obviously if you're looking at the nail from another direction, let's see if I can show you that as well. So let's go back there. If you're looking at the nail from this direction, can you see the nail casts a shadow on this little piece just directly underneath it? So you've got that little dark, almost like a little dark line there underneath the nail as well. So if you can get that in, then you're really starting to get some lovely detail. And then of course your hand casts a shadow. So let's zip him around. Yeah, you see that's why I turned my paper around. It bled through onto there. Okay, so your hand casts a shadow. Let's see if I can move this other camera. Rearrange him a little bit. And let's see if we can see that shadow. From the side. There we go, see it quite nicely, eh? Now, take a look at the shadow. It's really dark here directly underneath the hand. As you come out, can you see what happens? It's not a perfect silhouette. It fades out. So you need to remember that. No matter what I do, I've obviously now got a heap of light here in the studio. You know, it's not just one light. So it's compounding the effect. But you'll find that all the edges aren't sharp edges. So get it nice and dark underneath there, because look there, that gives you that lovely distance, because that contrast and that shadow contrast way at the back there gives you that distance and the height. And as I lift my hand up, look what happens to that shadow. It gradually softens and softens as more light can get in between. Until eventually it just disappears, it just becomes sort of a haze at the bottom there. The closer my hand gets, can you see how it's getting darker and darker and darker? So you need to just bear that in mind. The closer your hand is to the paper or to an object, the stronger the shadow it's going to cast. Alright, so now let's flip this back again. So I'm going to draw this guy today. So I do challenge you to draw your own hand. Take a snapshot of your own hand. So I'm just resetting my camera here quickly. Just so that we've got a view from the side as well, for in case we need it. Now, when you start drawing a guy like this, what I'm going to draw out is obviously all my sharp edges, my found lines, which is all the outlines. Then the most prominent folds, I'll draw them in at the same hardness, you could say. When it comes to little wrinkles like this, I'll draw them, but I'll draw them in super light, because they stuff you can, even if you lose them, you can easily judge them in. And I promise you, even if you're drawing your own hand, you're not going to know whether you've drawn it wrong or not. So here you can see what I've done is in the blue is the harder lines that I've got to make sure I don't lose them, and in the green is softer lines. I don't mind if I lose them. I can still judge them. So now, even without looking at the photograph, we can immediately tell where our highlights and our shadows and those kind of things are going to be. Because I know this guy and this guy and this guy are at different angles. I know I've got some padding over here, so in those little folds there, I know they're going to go dark. This guy and this guy are at two different angles, so him and him will have two overall tonal value differences. As we go down here onto this little flat area over here, onto the box, you could say, this piece here is going to have its own, it's quite flat, and you could look at your hand and you'll see, alright, I can see that guy over there is flat, so it's going to have one reasonably flat shading. As you come out here to your arm, you know you've got this side, that side, and then obviously a little bit of an underside, so you're probably going to have 1, 2, 3 tonal values going on there. Here by the padding, remember we said the little center piece is going to be dark, so I probably know I'm going to start off dark over there, and as I come out here it's going to go lighter, because inside there you're not going to get much light. These guys are on top, they're casting a shadow on these guys at the bottom. So I know all these guys here at the bottom are going to be dark. And I haven't even, you know, all I've got is a sketch. But just using a little bit of common sense, your knowledge of light and how light affects objects will automatically tell you what's going to happen. So if we go back to the photo, we can see that there's the padding. We know it's going to go darker into there because the light can't go into those little crevices there. Here's this flat little piece, and look, there is one flat tonal value. Here we said these are going to be two different tonal values, and look carefully. Look at this lovely little highlight this guy is getting. That guy is roughly the same tonal value, but he hasn't got that highlight on him, that little bit of, your skin is semi-reflective. So that's that little bit of reflected light over there that he hasn't got. These guys casting a shadow over there. The light can't get inside there, so it's all dark there. It gets lighter as we go out. 1, 2, 3 tonal values. Here, this guy over here would normally be dark, right? But obviously we're getting reflected light off the white paper. And that's illuminating there and there. And little odd little places like there and there. Even this little underside here is slightly lighter, and you can see a bit of reflected light on the bottom of here, this piece of the thumb as well. A little bit of reflected light over there too. Alright, so let's go and draw this guy. So I've drawn him out onto my paper. Again, you can see he's really light. Really light. So what I'm going to do is let's see how we can do this. When you start anywhere. What I usually try and do is I'll try and establish as much of a tonal contrast as what I can as quickly as possible. So I would start off, say, with, alright, so first things first, let's just get our pencils up over there so that you know what I'm working with. And let's maybe put our reference picture up there. So can you see this little dark area? Yeah, in between where the fingers are. That's a great place to start because it's going to give me instantly some nice contrast between the paper. Because at the moment everything is white. So anything I draw is going to look dark. So if I get this lovely dark in here first, so I'm going to use a B pencil. So I'm going to just carefully outline there, even though a lot of these guys will become lost lines. I'm still going to carefully outline it, just to make sure that I don't lose that line. So I'll outline that first, and then let's get that in. So if you look on the photograph, you can see it's not super black. And that's why I haven't gone for, say, an 8B or so. So I'm starting off with a B, and then from there I'll decide if he's dark enough or not. Now when you're drawing hands, you have to be really patient, because like I say, there's lots and lots of very fine shadings in it. So needless to say, I'm going to do my utmost to finish this guy today. So I'm going to have to draw it at a hang of a rate. So he won't be super refined. Well, needless to say, I'm going to show you how to refine him. So let's get that guy going there. So immediately I've got a bit of a contrast, so that when I get to the fingers and stuff above it, at least I've got something to judge from. So I think I can probably go a bit darker there. So let's maybe go to a 4B. Still looking just a tad grey. Maybe we can, if I zoom in here a bit. Yeah, then at least you can see my lines. So you're still looking at that grey. So So what I'm doing now is I'm just comparing from the photograph. I know it's not black, so I can't go 8B, but I think that's looking a bit better, eh? Just make sure we've got good focus over there. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Alright, so now what we can do is look and compare. That's going to be your biggest asset. One of your biggest assets. There's sort of three things that we're going to constantly be doing. So if I put that picture down, the photograph over there, I can look at this tonal value that I've just drawn in. Now I'm going to start anywhere. So I'll just say start with this little piece over here. I do it little section for section. So that is slightly lighter. I can see there's a line there, but it's very small tonal difference. So I'm going to pop that guy in first, and then I can get to the rest. So now I've used my 8B over here, well my 4B, sorry. So let's maybe say start with a chisel point 4B. Because we know he's not going to draw quite as dark as my rounded, as the sharp point. And obviously I'm going to absolutely no pressure. I'm just going to very lightly. So I'd rather start off too light. It's easy for me to darken things up. And now all I'm looking for is just to get the shape of that shadow over there. Seems to run something like that. And from here on I can start the actual shading work. So I'll see it's dark in here on this edge. So I'll just keep darkening him until that line is as found or as lost as I can see on the photo, or as close to that as possible. So I can just make him out, and that's perfect. Alright, so for the rest of the guys, let's say start off with a 2H. So most of it is a 2H over here, and then we've got that little bit of reflected light on there. So again, I'm just going to stick to just that one dude over there. So he sort of just disappears over there. Let's just lay down a basic little tonal value over here. Very light, absolutely no pressure. I'm not going to worry about that little reflected highlight. We'll work him in as we go along. So I'm trying to get this as even as possible for now. It's just the basic tonal value that I'm getting down there. Alright, so now let's take a look and see how do these guys meet. He gradually becomes darker, so he goes darker over here in that little fold. The fold's always a good place to start, because you know they're dark. So from there it's easy to, let's say for example you've started with a 2H. Now you're not sure, is that 2H going to be too dark or too light? So start in the dark, then you know you're safe. If you start by the area that's light and it doesn't work out, then you've got a problem, and you've got to try and lift out and stuff like that. Right, so I think I've got it nice and even there now. So to lift out that little highlight, I'll just use my my kneaded eraser. I'll just tap there. So I've got the rounded point. Maybe we roll it into a sausage, or into a ball and then into a sausage. So I've got this nice little rounded piece over here. So I'll just tap on that. and that lifts out our highlight for us. Alright, so point number 2 that you need to bear in mind when you're working with hands, because this is basically essentially a tube. You know, we've done this in the ball class, and that is, you got to complete the rounding. So I'm going to zoom back to here for a second. In other words, our highlight is there. It's not right on the edge, and even if it was, always, can you see how it's going? Because it's curving like that, this piece here is darker than right next to it. It's got that little bit of a darkness on that edge over there. So I call that completing the rounding. So I'll just come back in here and just darken that up there like that, and I'll very gently just fade it away. And that gives me that nice, just that nice end to the rounding. Alright, so let's just finish this little shading over here. So let's say maybe go over to an yeah, I think we can go over to an HB on that guy. So you see I'm starting inside that little crevice over there, and then I'll work my way out. Now initially, yes, it is difficult to get these initial tonal values right because there's just so much white around. So leave that at that for now. That's fine. It's good enough. You always come back and adjust later. It's quick to do that. All right, so let's move to this guy. So I know I've ended off there with an HB. So this little dark piece here, if I look and compare, he is roughly as dark as that guy over there. So I know I can start off with the same pencil because I've compared those two tonal values, and they're the same. So he's darkest in this little corner over here. So let's make sure we don't lose that little line there. And now I'm looking to see how does that, what's the shape of the shadow? Yeah, now I think we can go even darker on that. Let's go say a B. So I want to go dark, but I don't want to apply pressure. At any time I must be able to pretty much use my eraser, or my kneaded eraser. There's a little extra fold over there, so let's just show him. I want to go for my kneaded eraser, and I must be able to lift this entire picture out. And that way you know, because you haven't pressed hard, you can fix any mistake. So it's darker over there, and it comes out here like this. And now you'll see here by this fold, I've worked the initial fold in, and then I faded him out to that side, and I'm fading him out to this side. This guy comes around to there. Now I'm pressing super soft. And it's quite dark in this little area here. Like that. Alright, so let's lay that initial tonal value down over here again. So again, I'll just stop there by the end over there. So I'm going for a nice even tonal value here. Okay, while we're at it, we may as well just complete that rounding. Okay, so here I'm taking a look. How do they meet? It's quite a quick little shading there. He seems to fade a little bit slower here at the bottom. And to the top he fades quite quickly. Here there's no line. That line sort of disappears over there. Now you find these little, to get that line to go from dark to fade away, just use flicks. Start your flicks with a soft pencil. And rather a blunt pencil than a sharp pencil, because remember it's not a found line, it's a last line. Alright, so let's head back over to the HB and let's get this tonal value right over here. Like that. Just a little darker over there. So I'm pressing a little bit harder there. Not too hard though. If you feel you're pressing hard, then rather move over to a different pencil. Get that over there, like that. So now this is round, there's no hard lines. Now you'll see if you get little dots like that, there's obviously a little imperfection in your paper there. So he's standing up higher, so he's grabbing more graphite. So just form yourself a little point with your kneaded eraser and just tap it until he's gone. And then just get the tonal value right again. Just fiddle in that little piece there. Just like that. Alright, so let's move on to the next guy. So again I'm going to look and compare. How dark is this dark compared to those guys? So I can see I'm not as dark over here as say over there. So now I need to decide, does this guy need to go lighter than that, or does that guy need to go darker? So if I take a look at this, I think this guy here actually needs to go a bit darker. So let's even go through to say a 4B in this little corner over here. And again, you can look and compare with this against that. This guy here, just in this little corner over here, can also go just a tad darker over there, like that. Alright, so now we can start tackling that finger over there. So I know he's not as dark as this guy, and there I used a 2 and a 4B. So let's go for an HB. Get that initial shape right, and you can see around this outline is going darker, so let's give him a nice little outline, and we know he's not going to disappear on us. We've got a nice little bit we can work from. Alright, so how does this guy shade? He's darkish over here. All this over here is quite dark. So it seems like maybe we're lucky we can still use our 2B over here. Get that basic over there. In here as well is quite dark. So again, I'm looking and comparing. This is roughly the same tonal value as what I've got over there. So I'm trying to get that similar or the same, as close as possible to the same tonal value. And then it goes lighter as it goes around there. So let's go back to our 2H. because this and that is still roughly the same. So I need to use the same pencil. Let's give him his overall tonal value there quickly. Very light little shading and as even as possible. And that's where the chisel point comes in quite handy, because it gives you lovely quick shadings. So like that. Alright, now we can go back to our HB and do some more refining. So this little dark piece over here fades out. So let's fade him out. And again, take a look how quick or how slow does this guy fade out. I think this whole area here can still go darker. This area over here. Like I say, I am working quite quick because I want to do my best to finish in the time. So I'm not trying to get everything perfectly smooth. Okay, we can still go a little bit darker. Again, I'm looking and comparing now with my my reference drawing. So you can see all this here needs to go darker. Now remember here, fade out to both sides. And see how quickly does he fade out. So on this side over here, he fades out quicker. Over here, he fades out slower. So especially here in the beginning, you'll find that you're going to have to revisit some of your previous little pieces that you've drawn, just to do those little adjustments, because now you're getting gradually more and more graphite on the paper, so it's easier and easier to judge these tonal values, because now you've got more contrasts to compare from. So let's just darken this up here a little bit. That seems to be good over there. Let's go back to a 2H. I just want to complete the rounding on this little piece over here. Quickly fade him out. And now if we still need to, just work out those little reflected lights. Like that. Right, so here I think I'm going to go to a B pencil, but around the sharp point, like this. I'm just going to get this little small little shading over here. That finger's indented over there where the thumb is pressing against it. So I want to get this little fading right. Here it fades away just a little bit slower. And can you see, I haven't even drawn this guy in. You can already see that indented effect over there, eh? Yeah, I think I'm happy with that guy there for now. Alright, so let's just quickly revisit we take a look at all these tonal values here, I think this guy here is possibly still a little bit too light on the drawing. Let's go back up to there, and you can you see that? He still looks a little bit light. So I'll go back to the 2B. I'll just continue to build him up a little bit. This is that little revisiting piece that I said. And you'll find it's just the first few of these limbs that you need to just, you can almost say, get yourself orientated with the tonal values that you've got. Alright, so in here he also goes darker in there. There's one shading that I didn't put in. To that little fold over there. So again, he goes really dark into there, and then he fades out from there. Yeah, I think that should do the trick for now. Alright, so let's move back. Let's move to this little piece over there. So it's quite an interesting little piece because it's got all sorts of indentations and humps and bumps. So the main color I see there still is pretty much this tonal value, eh? And then with some highlights and stuff. So we know what to do already. Let's get the 2H. So again, I'm going to just give him that overall tonal value. Just this whole area here. Nice and smooth. As even as possible. Very careful here along the pencil. We don't want to, because it's a perfectly straight line, we've got to be careful to not lose that line or get him all squiggly. Now to get it smooth, what you do is go in different directions like this. So that if you do have any lines, the one set of lines obscures the other set of lines. And you can obviously at this stage as well, you can use your finger, just make sure there's no oily, it's not oily or anything like that. You can use your finger, just gently rub it to smooth it out as well. But don't over rub. It's really important that you don't over rub. Alright, so now I'm going to take a look. I've got that basic. And now where's he darker? He's darker over there. So there, let's say use an HB, because he's not as dark as that. So we'll start off with an HB there. Again, I'll start off in that little crevice where it's darkest, because I don't know what this pencil is going to do yet. And then we can go lighter. So he goes lighter in this area. That. Here's a funny little dent over there. So again, you see, because I'm using the chisel point, it's easy for me to get little, just by using more the tip and then immediately going around to the flat, I can get little shadings like that. Okay, let's take a look over here. We've got this little fold going around over here somewhere. So again, because I've lost that line, I'm using that other shapes to compare, to see. So I got that little line over there, and I'm just judging that shape in. It may not be perfect, and that's fine. And then it also comes out around that direction there, roughly. So this area here is darker. that, and then we've got a little darker patch over here. And let's complete the rounding over there. If you don't complete this rounding, it makes it just look like your hands are cut out. In other words, it ends over there. It doesn't continue. And so this area, there's a nice little highlight over there. So this area here obviously needs to go a little bit darker for us to get that contrast. So again, it's part of that flat part of the hand. Can you see I'm bearing in mind where am I on the hand? Is it padded? Is it flat? Is there a bone there? So I'll do that. And now I'll just take my kneaded eraser. Again, I'm going to form myself just a point, but not a sharp point. More of a bit of like a rounded point like that. Because I know I've got a little highlight over here. So I'll just lift him out, and I've got a few little highlights going on over there, and over there, and over here, like that. And that guy goes down there like that. And I'll just use your brush or your finger and just soften him out there like that. If you still need further softening, then go back to a really light pencil, say a 2H. And just soften the little lines. And if you need to, obviously, go darken whatever needs to be darkened as well. So for example, I can see over here, so I'm looking on comparing with my reference drawing. Over here, he needs to go darker. So I need to darken this. So I'm still with a 2H for now. And he fades out lighter. And what's happening? It's now darkening that, or it's deepening that little looking, almost giving me a looking in effect, that little crevice over there. So he goes to over there. I think I'm happy with that guy. Over here we can fade him out just a little bit slower. It's almost like he's casting a shadow there. So maybe let's go even darker. Let's go to the HB and fade that guy out slower there. Flick over there to get that little fading away effect there. Alright, so now I'm just fiddling around with the contrasts, just to get those contrasts right. I'm going to leave it at that, so I don't want to fiddle too much because otherwise we're not going to get done. Alright, so let's continue from there, and I can continue anywhere. It sort of makes half sense to continue either there or to start that thumb, so that when those two guys join each other, then you've got the same thing. So I think maybe what I'll do is, let's say, just start with this little piece here next to the pencil, and let's get that guy done, and then from there we can start with the other thumb, and we get these guys to join each other. Alright, so now I'm going to look and compare again to see what kind of tonal value do I need to start off with. This is slightly lighter than this, and then we've still got this little shadow going on there. So I think I'll start off there. It was roughly a 2H, so I think I'll start off with a 2H, and then we can darken up from there. So So first things first, let's get this line here by the pencil nice and sharp. Like that. And then you find there's just a little bit of a little corner over there. So this is where the hand ends, and you can see just a tiny little piece of the inside over there. Right, so again, I'll start right there where that thumb joins. I'm not going to go over that. I'm going to keep that line there for now. It's a very subtle line, but I'm going to just keep it. I don't want to lose it. This little edge over here as well. So all this work here is absolutely, there's no pressure at all. Get this tonal value as even as possible. So now I can see this joint sort of ends over there, because here again you've got a knuckle over there. So I think I'll end it off over there like that. So you can see I'm using, there I went this way, and here I'm going this way. It doesn't bother me because I'm going to go over it in different directions anyway. So yes, at the moment I've got lines, but shortly I won't. Because the one set of lines is going to obscure the other set of lines. I think I'll just turn this guy for a second there like that on his side. So it's pretty much like, it's like a cross-hatching effect. And there you go, line's gone. Malin is asking, isn't there a little bit of a nail showing on the tip of the finger? Yes, you're 100% correct, Malin. I actually forgot about that. Let's quickly go do it, eh? Before we completely forget about it. Thank you. Let's go to there. Okay, I'm going to zoom way in on that guy. Zoom way in, like that, so I can show you how we do that. It's a basic little one. We'll see better on the thumb. But you're going to have lots of little guys over there. So now I'm looking out. I know there's that little white bit on the tip. Now obviously I'm not going to see the half moon on this guy. So I think let's even go over to just, it's such a small place. I'm going to use my 2H, but the sharp point. I know it's dark on this little ridge over here. So I'm looking out for that little ridge over there. I'll just gently shade that out. And I know he's going to cast a little shadow there on the end as well. So I'm going to put that little shadow in. And I'm starting here from the dark, and I'm just going to flick it out and I'll stop right there on the beginning. Just stop before the beginning, just to get that little bit of white of the nail there. And that's it. So that was pretty easy on that guy. We'll have a bit more fun with that on the when we get to the thumbnail, eh? Alright, so let's zoom out there again. Let's go and complete this little area over here. Alright, so let's go and get those tonal values correct. So a good place to start is always that shadow there. And I can see that shadow is really, really dark. It's almost as dark as that. So I'll even start off with, say, a 2B. there, and let's see, stops roughly around there. So I'm just getting that edge there along that pencil right, so it is nice and sharp. And I'm going to take a look, how does this little shadow, it doesn't sort of stop solid, right? Because this part of the hand over here has got all sorts of little curves and things. Let's zoom in there for a second and you can see that. Can you see over here? Yeah, this piece of the skin is closer to the pencil. There's a dip, and then that's closer to the pencil. Now, because of that dip, look what happens to the shadow. It like extends, it sort of extends over there. Here, it stops touching the hand completely. So now suddenly we've got a cast shadow extends all the way out there. And that's what we have to replicate over here. So I know that shadow does that over there. And then over here, it does this kind of a thing. So he starts off dark and he goes lighter and lighter and lighter. So again, I'll start off rather too light. It's easy for me to extend him. And then here, again, there's not a sharp line. He quickly fades out there. And he quickly fades out there. It seems to be roughly that. And then we've got this little shadow that comes out over here. It's quite light, so I'm pressing as light as I possibly can in this area. It just runs out along there. Again, he starts off dark and he gets lighter and lighter. Remember, we chatted about that earlier. Your shadows all fade away. The further away they are from the more distance there is between the object casting the shadow and the object that's getting the shadow. Alright, so I think I'm just going to zip out here to an HB for a second. Just give this another light little layer just to bring him out. Alright, now let's see, where else are we going lighter and darker? Over there we're going lighter. A little bit of reflections over there again. So here I've got some lines going on there. Little folds. So now I've taken that rounded point and I've just squeezed him to form myself a chisel point. And I'll, depending on how sharp I want that chisel point, I'll just tap him there like that to round him off more or less. Alright, so now again I'm just going to judge is sort of on that, where that little corner is. So I'll pop him in over there, and him in next to it there like that. And here's also just a little bit of a highlight over there. And that there is just generally brighter. I'll just tap him over there. Yeah, that's fine. So over here we can just gently soft, because you've got that little bit of a crease over there, so I'm just darkening up that little lost line over there. That's giving me that crease that I need over there. Cool, let's start with the thumb. Just for a second, I just want to get this as, use those really soft pencils. It doesn't always give you a nice solid coverage, so I always come back in with a lighter pencil just to get me that nice bit more of a solid coverage. That just solidifies that. Can you see that? Cool, let's go to the thumb so I can move that guy to there. See if we're lucky. There we go. I'll zoom in one more. Okay, so remember we said we've got two different angles there. So this guy, let's start with him. He's slightly darker than that one. Not much, just a little bit. So again, I'm going to look and compare, because I can see this thumb is lighter than the fingers at the back. So I'm going to look and compare. What tonal value do I need to use? So if I see this tonal value is roughly the same as what we've got on the edges over there. So, yep, we can start with the 2H again. So I'll work around that, just give him a basic little tonal value, all up to the joint. Nice and even, because I know, remember with our roundings, I know that rounding is going to end, and I can see there's actually a line there. A little crease is going to end over there. And that's where I'm going to fill him up to. Just a basic little, very basic little flat coverage there. I'm working quite fast, but if you work slower and you overlap these lines that you're putting down with the chisel point, you can get a perfect smooth shading once off without having to go over it. So let's make sure we don't lose that line there with a nail, so here we have to be a bit more careful. Gently colour that guy in there. And careful here by the edges, we don't want to lose our line. Otherwise your fingers become fatter and fatter. That's not a good idea, is it? So that's giving me a nice little even shading there. Alright, so now I'm going to take a look. I know this, it will be pointing more towards the light. That will be pointing less towards the light because is curling away. See, I hold my thumb there like that. That is at this angle. That is at that angle. They're two different angles. So I'm going to, I know that. So I'm going to really go and look and see where exactly is it going darker and where's it at its darkest. So I can see here I've got this little crease over there. Short little crease. So I'll flick him in just to get me started, and then from there I can go darker. And if I continue looking, I can see here's darker, quite a bit darker over here for that side, and then it sort of comes down here almost like in a bit of a a triangle shape, eh? That. When there's no hard lines, he just gradually softens up as he goes around to the top of the finger. And then he's slightly lighter towards the bottom because you've now got that reflected light from the white of the paper. So I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom. So here in this case, completing the rounding means I have to go lighter instead of darker. Alright, here by this end of the nail, the little darker edge over there, so let's go darker there. So it's not quite dark there by the nail itself. And then he just quickly fades away. Fade him away there like that. Now I've got little dark edges here by the side of the nail there as well. Like that. And I'm looking for it on that side there too. Something like that. And now this little dark bit seems to sort of just curl around there and disappear. Curl around there and disappear. And this overall tonal value here needs to go darker. You can see this is not quite dark enough here yet. From there, this here can also go a bit darker. So let's maybe go to an HB over here. Got to be careful because it's quite light. There isn't much tonal value or contrast to work with here. Okay, so now there, let's just get that little edging right. So I'll say use a 2B over there. Let's just neaten that guy up. Get a nice sharp edge there like that. Here as well, it's still a little bit too. There we go, that's better. Alright, so while we're at it, let's take a look at that nail. I'm going to zoom way in onto that guy. So I can see he's darker here in this little corner, darker here, goes lighter to there, and he stays quite light all the way to that corner there. And then obviously we've got our little half moon, and the white of the nail on the end there. So let's say start even just with a 2H. And let's just give him a basic tonal value. Now what's cool is all the surrounding areas are darker, so I can just go straight over that, I don't care. Because you're not even going to see it. So this here's the white of the nail and the half moon over there. So that's that. Right. Now we can go over to 2H. And I think what I'll do is, I'm actually going to use a sharp pointed 2H still. Let's stick with the 2H. What I want to do is just plot out the white of the nail over here. So there's almost nothing there, and as it comes around here, you see a bit more. And that gives me that. And let's do the same with his half moon. Let's plot him out. He comes around something like this. There, like that. Right, so I know everything over here I need to fade in. Now we said he was darkest over here, so I'll start with the darkest. And let's just color this whole thing in. Right, so can you see? That's why we start with the dark. So we don't want to go too dark. So now I can go all the way back to my 2H flat, because he doesn't give me such dark shadings, and see if that will do the trick. No. Alright, 2H flat. Or H flat, sorry. You should give me the tonal value that I'm looking for. Now again, look and compare. Is that and that the same tonal value? In this case, yes they are, but sometimes they're not. There, like that. Let's get this little corner over there. Just get that little final bit over there, nice and dark, like that. Okay, there we go. I'm not seeing any little shadows over there. If you feel you haven't got quite, because like here I've got a highlight and a and the white of this meeting each other. So what I'm going to do is just take my 2H sharp point, just the thinnest little line, just to separate those two guys over there. Alright, let's continue with this little piece over here. I think I'll start off, say again, we'll do the 2H thing. Let's get him into view. Like that. So I think what's going to be important to here is here at the ends is getting those little shapes and goodies right over there. Alright, so let's first just block him in. Getting that tie in right, eh? So I can see that tie in over here is a little bit darker. So just to make sure I don't lose that, I'm going to make that immediately slightly darker. Just to make sure he's not going to disappear on me. No surprises. Right, so let's lay that tonal value down there again. So again, we'll get it nice and even. Now, can you see now what I said, that drawing hands is time consuming? So I'm going to just turn this guy over here this way, just to allow me to shade him faster. Over here I've got a few little folds, so let's just flick them in just a tad darker than the surrounding background. Just so that when we do fade him in, it doesn't disappear on us. So it's by no means the final rendition of them, it's just so that we don't lose them. And like I say, you could judge them in, it's not a problem, simply because even the owner of the hand doesn't know where they are. If you get them in the ballpark, you're A for away. So I'm getting this right, just really rough. You take your time and get it nice and smooth and everything. Okay, so now let's take a look. This area over here is quite a bit darker. So let's say start off with an HB. And let's just work that in. So for now I'm just going to keep it on side. It's just going to allow me to shade quicker. Okay, so now between there and there, it's a continuous shading. There's no sudden stops and starts. Besides for that tiny little bit of a crease over there. So, and again, it's not on the end. You see that end there? The bottom part of the finger is getting picking up reflected light from the paper. Gradually gets lighter as it goes to there, and gradually lighter as we come down to here. So again, what you need to do is just keep looking and comparing with other parts of the hand that you've already drawn to get the tonal value correct. And same as me, don't be scared to turn your paper. It just gives you the more efficient way of doing your shadings and things. Oopsie. It's only got a long start line there. Or two. So I'm pressing a little bit harder than before, and I just clipped the edge. Alright, so let's go over to, say, a B pencil here. It's a little bit darker in this area, just over there. Like that, and then let's just fade this piece away over here. Yeah, that should do the trick. Alright. Now let's go and just complete the rounding. Let me turn him back up so you can see him the right way around. Like that. Okay, so can you see we've just got this little darker area. I could probably go a little bit darker here, eh? Then let me just turn him sideways again for a second. Just allow me to do that quicker. Yeah, that looks better, hey? That looks a ton better. Alright, now let's take a look. Let's go and complete the rounding on that guy. So I'll go back to my 2H, because it's not very dark. Let's just get that edge just a tad darker there and quickly fade him in. Same thing happens over here. And he just fades in there like that, and now eventually these two guys tie up and become the same tonal value. So we'll get to that. Let's first finish here. Alright, so this guy isn't just one long solid tube, right? Can you see there's little highlights and shadows and things in it? Because there's not one perfectly solid, smooth, straight tube. Because here you've got a bone, there you've got a bone, and in between there's no padding and stuff. So this little area here is darker. Like that, and then we've got some reflected light over here, so let's just tap him out, and then we've got some reflected light. Let me get my reference photo here, right there on that knuckle, in that area there, like that. So we'll tap him out. So I'll just soften those edges. Alright, so now we've got a few little creases and things, right? So I'll just stick with the chisel point, because they aren't deep or anything. So I've got one, say, going, so we can maybe darken that, go up there now, like that. We've got one going along here. Now can you see I'm just flicking in, just gently flicking it in. What I'm more important here is I'm more worried about getting these directions right than anything else. And now can you see, as I'm going over them a few times like this, you're never going over at exactly the same place. So automatically you're getting that lost line effect. And because you're flicking it, that side and that side never stop in a hard edge either. There's a little one over here as well. And you can just gradually go over it until you're happy with the darkness. And now remember, each one of those guys have got a little highlight. So in this case we've got sort of a dual light going on, but it's mostly coming from the left to the right, and we know that by the pencil. So now each one of those guys are concave. So in other words, the highlight goes on the right hand side, the opposite side to the light. So add a little highlight on those guys there like that. And can you see what happens? I just indents it. And again, you can just soften him out as much as you want to, darken him as much as you want to. It depends on how deep he is. Okay, so let's complete this little hand area over here. I'll have to zoom out a tad there to get that all in. Little flat area. And while we're at it, let's maybe just give ourselves a feel for what do we look like. What does our drawing look like at this point? Okay, so we're starting to get that feel for the hand there. Okay, so let's continue with this little area there. That piece there. So now I'm taking a look to see how do the tonal values change. I can see slightly darker here, and it goes lighter to there, and it goes lighter to there. So this little piece here, just before the wrist curls, is the darkest. In actual fact, look at that little fine line over there. He's quite dark there. I think that's probably because of that shadow that we had, eh? So let's maybe start off with a 2H fill again. So I'll just have to turn him sideways to get it done nice and quickly. I think while we're at it, we may as well just do the whole area. So this piece here has got that reflected light on it, so I'm going to super soft. Now here's a ton of angle changes going on. So we're going to have to be pretty careful for that. Make sure we get them right. When I'm doing these broad shadings like this, I'm using my elbow as a pivot point, and I'm swinging my whole lower arm. And then to get the different angles, all I need to do is just move my elbow. You see that? So just move my elbow. And I'm not going over there, I'm sort of stopping just before it. Because I'm looking for an even layer, I can't go over that, otherwise it's going to lay another layer over it. And that would make it darker. Let's give it another direction to get rid of the lines. Or obscure the lines, we probably won't get rid of the lines. You take your time, get this nice and smooth. I think that's good enough there for now. I'll leave it at that. Alright, let's give him a flip. There we go. Alright, so we said over here we've got to go a bit darker. So let's see if we can do it with a 2H without pressing too hard. This is just simply I'm adding now a new layer of graphite over the previous, and that's automatically making it darker. complete the rounding bit. So yeah, now I've got that little bit of a fold there where the thumb and the pointing finger meet. And that's why we've got that little bit of a highlight over there, because as the pointing finger comes up, and then here you've got that almost like a bit of a valley in between the two. Okay, and then we've got this little thumb coming up there like that. As he meets, he just gradually, his tonal value just gradually disappears into the rest. So all this here can go darker with that same tonal value. Just going over this little highlight, he seems a bit bright. You'll often see, as you're working, you tend to spot other little things quite by chance. So then, while you're thinking about it, zip back and do it. Same as like just now when Mylin mentioned I hadn't done the nail, I went and did it immediately. That way I know, okay, I'm not going to forget it. Because if you've forgotten it once, there's a good chance you're going to forget it twice. So if you remember it, quickly go and do it. Okay, so let's just get this here all. This is dark there, and then he goes lighter as he meets the arm, and then here, roughly around here, we've got this bone ends, and you see you've got a quick little angle change over there, and that's around here in this area. So there we also need to go darker in this area around here. So it's not a hard line or anything, but it is. So we have to fade him out to both sides. I think that's now probably a good time for us to go over to an HB. Let's get this little edge over here right. Let's fade him out over there. Same with the top of the arm. It's quite dark over here on the top of the arm. Now luckily as I'm adding more layers it's getting darker and darker. Okay, so over here is also quite a bit darker over here. So to do that quickly I'm going to just flip him around for a short while. That is this piece over here that I'm working on. So we've got lots of little creases going on over there, but I'm not going to worry about them. We know we can lift them out because we're working light with a pencil without pressing hard. Can lift everything out. Okay, so that comes out down here, and as it comes around here, it's still dark, but it's gradually going lighter. Yes, seems to be quite dark. Fades out quite quickly over there again, eh? And here is actually quite a bit broader. Right, so let's just flick in just one or two of these little direction lines again here, because now that we're going darker, they're gradually disappearing on us. We don't want that to happen. So we've got this kind of a thing going on over here. So again, you see I'm not working too accurately. And here we've got some lighter guys, and they come out at this angle, like that over there. but they're a bit more subtle. So I'm just getting this little fold piece in over here with this meaty section of your hand ends. Just getting that little darker shading going over there, and he comes up slightly higher again. You see that? Slightly higher, right up into the wrist. And he just fades away over there. Alright, let's see if that's good enough. So I'm just going over to a B over here. Now I'm going to just take a little bit more time, because now I've got the basics down there. So I'm going to just fill in a few of these little creases with a darker. So I've got the B here. There, and here's quite a bit of scribbling going on, so let's soften that out. Just that scribbling there from having to work fast. Right, so here I've got this little, some creases going on over here. So again, it's a bit of a seesaw motion. Over here we've got some definite ones. So I'll use the tip to get nice sharp, a few little sharp little lines for these darkest ones, and then we go over them again. To sort of just get them so that they become lost lines. Okay, this guy goes up over here. And we've got a small little fold over there, nothing dramatic. So now I'm having to just sort of slow down again, to get the detail work. So we've got the basics in reasonably fast. Okay, let's say splits. It's quite weird, these little cracks. They tend to, almost like, looks like lightning streaks. They split up and stuff like that. So you'd even have a little thing doing like that. And now don't panic if it goes too dark. Make your little chisel point and just tap over him like that. So you can get these guys too dark initially, and just come back in, and then you can gradually soften them down. So what I'll often do is I'll even soften them down in a patchy effect, so that they're not all identical, or even it's maybe a bit darker here and it's lighter there and it goes dark over there again, and so on. See, I'm just sort of really roughly just judging more the depth and the direction. So maybe even there's just a little shorter one over there like that. Alright, so now we've got, let's get that dark in there as well, hey, just while we're at it. So I've got my B here, so I think I'll stick with him. So he's dark over here, and then he goes lighter as we go out. So here I'm going to make sure I get a nice little found line where you've got this guy ends and that guy starts. Can you see? Because you've got this little valley in the center of your hand. So I've got to get a nice found line over there to give me that distance. So then he's dark over here, and as he comes out, he gradually gets lighter and lighter. So we'll lighten that guy up, lighten that guy up. So this found line gradually becomes a lost line over there. As that distance between there and there disappears, and eventually you can see one solid object where they meet. So I'll just gradually fade that out over there. So I'm just judging where does he stop. He stops around there. And this edge is still darker. There, like that. And now we can start to see that lovely reflected light over there. Can you see that? Pretty cool, eh? It's those little reflected lights that make such a difference between a realistic drawing or painting. I could say a realistic artwork and an average one. Alright, so we've got that over there. Alright, so let's see some of these little reflected lights as they sort of follow up with the creases like that. So I'm just using that chisel point and I'll just go up there like that. Maybe one or two go up a little bit further. Like that. I think over here that guy's probably just a tad too dark, eh? So let's just soften him out. And just a little bit of refining here on the tonal values. Just to get that tie in between the hand and the arm. So it's a little bit darker, it's lighter over there, in that area. Around here. Just a little bit lighter over there. And over here, this is all darker again. While we're at it, let's quickly flick in those hairs, eh? Let's maybe use, say, a B pencil. So you've got a few little hairs, let's go and zoom in there. A few little armies there. So they're not very long, and then there's lots of them, so I'm going to use just a little curling flick like that. Let's see, maybe I can zoom in a bit more, and we can get a better feel for that. So I've seen this area, yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot more here. So just add a bunch of flicks. And here's the hairs sort of start from here. There's maybe just one or two that are doing their own thing, standing up, and a few short ones going out over there up the hand. Not too long. So I'm just suggesting those hairs. I'm not trying to draw every single one or anything like that. Just a few little hairs. Yeah, just like that, that's great. 2 ticks and you're done. Oopsie, sorry, that was the wrong way. Great, let's see where we are at the moment. Stamp that. Okay, so we're starting to look like a hand, eh? So I can see I can still go a little bit darker here. Very quickly. So guys, it is just a tad rough. Do you forgive me? Alright, so now let's put in those darker guys at the bottom. So the rest of the fingers. I'm going to pop them in quite fast as well because I want to show you the shadows too. So we've got those guys over there. Yeah, I think we're running out of time. So what I'll do is I'll do, say, this guy over here, and then that'll give you a good feel for them, because he's now at the bottom. So again, he's quite dark, so instantly I'm going to start with a dark pencil. So I've got my B here. There, I can see there's a little bit of I can see that fold over there. Now here I need to get that nice sharp line, because I've got distance between the two, so there's a definite found line over there. Alright, so now let's take a look. This guy comes out. I got to look very careful. Again, there's a little bit of over here, just that little bit of reflected light coming from the back. All this here is quite dark. I'll color him in quite quickly over there. Oopsie. And again, to complete that rounding over there, he's not going darker, he's going a little lighter. That sort of just ends in this direction over there. Yeah, this little piece here, I was busy looking at the reference picture and still scribbling along in a direction. That'll teach me. Okay, then over here he also goes just lighter in that little piece over there. Alright, so let's use a 4B pencil over here. So again, I'm looking and comparing to see the darkness of this guy versus other areas that I've done. Carefully up to that line over there. Like that, and then from here, this is all just one. It's a really quick little shading. I'll maybe even just go over to the flat. This is my HB. And now here's a nice little rounding fuss. So it goes lighter here to the nail. And then darker towards this back piece. Around here. Okay, now here, this nail is casting a little shadow. So let's get that in. And we know around here, next to the nail is darker. Over there, like that. It's lighter there. Little round tip over here that I've got now is lighter over there. So I'm just tapping there to lighten that guy up. And let's see, I think I'll use a H pencil for over here. So there's one even tonal value over this area, and then as it curls in, it quickly gets. So I'm not going to worry about that little white of the nail bit. I'll show you what I do there. Just do that, and then it goes dark over here. So just press harder there. see if I can get away with that. And I'll form a very fine little point like this. Yeah, so Malin is mentioning obviously women don't have noticeable hair on their arms. No, with a woman you'd rather just leave out the hair, otherwise you are heading for trouble. Like a friend of mine says, he says you're cruising for a bruising, so you rather just leave the hair out. But obviously with us men you need to get that in. Okay. So I've just lightly lifted that out. Over there, that little half moon, you can hardly see it. So you can suggest it, but chances are you're not going to see it. Alright, so let's have a quick little spy, because I see we are sort of heading towards time, and I don't want us to go too far over the time. Let's just take a look at these shadows. Remember we said they sort of all just fade out and disappear and stuff like that. But now look carefully. Remember we also said that the closer the object is to the surface it's casting a shadow, the darker it is. So look at this really dark line. Isn't that just exactly the same as the creases that we've been doing? Absolutely, it's the same thing. So you've got a lost line there. It looks like a found line, but it's a lost line because your skin is curling in underneath, and then the flat surface is gradually, as the shadow comes out, it's gradually fading away. So be careful of that. So let's pop back to say over here. So let's go and put in that little shadow over there. So I'm going to start quite dark because it is a dark shadow. Lovely and dark inside there. So I'll start say with a 2B. Let's see if that's dark enough. So I'm going to put that line in there initially. Just to give me that edging. And that, let's say for example, because here now your arm lifts up off the table, so that shadow would get softer. So I'll just flick it there to make that disappear. And then from here I'm going to very softly. It's a super quick shading this. Very quickly shaded into the hand. Just to break that little line. Just on the tip of my pencil. And that gives you just that final rounding of the hand itself. Alright, so let's get this shadow onto the screen so you can see what I'm shading. Like, there we go. Okay, so we've got this little fading out going on over there, right? So I can see here it's going to fade out slower. So now I'm going to go all the way back to a soft, or the flat point, and a harder pencil. So I've got all the way back to an HB. So I can see this guy starts off hard, and he broadens a little bit over here to this direction. And then from here, it sort of fades out. So because I've got two light sources, because I had the window open, and I had the one studio light on, that's why I've got these funny little double shadows and stuff going on over here. So I'll start him off, say here I've got the HB, and as I go out I want him to go gradually lighter and lighter. So now we're going to do a little shading. So that's an HB. Then we head out to an H. And I'm just judging how far does this shadow actually go out. And finally a 2H. And this is all the flat point, because that gives us those nice smooth shadings. Like that, and a last little rub like that, and that makes him just disappear. Okay, so here we said this guy was quite dark and he faded out, so I'm back to a 2B again, just to get that length right. And now there are some darker patches in here. So you're just using that flat piece because there's no hard lines. So I put him in, fade him out to both sides. And isn't that what we've been doing the whole day anyway? So you've already practiced with that. And then here is gradually just getting thinner and thinner to underneath there. And then as you get here to the arm, let's do that. Because your arm is lifting up off the table, you got that extra distance again. So this guy here goes quite dark, like that. And he fades out slower. So I'll stick with a 2B or whichever pencil I'm using for the darkest, a little bit longer. And now you go back over to your B, H, 2H, and so on to get that last little fading out over there. Right, so I think I've covered the basics. Let me show you now what this guy looks like when he's done. So let's zoom out of it there. So that's what we've done in the class. So we didn't do too bad. Probably another half an hour it would be done. So that's what he looks like when he is done. So you can see those little shadows there by that the nail casts on the finger. Look at that realism that it adds, eh? And that extra light. And then with a pencil, I just gave it 3 very basic little shadings. That's pretty much white, and that's a mid-tone, like I used a H over there. And here I used an HB on this darker guy over here. So it's white, H, HB. And it was surprisingly dark along this guy over here, believe it or not. Right, and there, can you see how these little shadows fade out? There he goes darker, and it's all those little shadows. And then right at the end, what I also do is I go and look for little reflected lights, because these guys are right up against the paper. I know the paper is white, I'm going to get reflected light. So can you see that? Just over there, a little tad of reflected light. This little lighter area on the finger there, over there. So you got that lovely light of the reflected light against this really dark shadow over there, and that just makes it really pop and jump out at you. And then here at the top, I just use my graphite stick. I use my 6B graphite stick, and I just colored that guy in over there just to get it nice and smooth. So never once did I go in this direction, because otherwise it would the lines would compete with the pencil. So I went horizontally and I went vertically. Now, can you notice that you can't see, it doesn't suddenly go, there isn't a dark outline here around the pencil. It goes from that tonal value to that tonal value, all the way across is the same. That's really important. So when you get to here, work like this very carefully. So you can run along, I think you can still see a little bit over there. You can still run along here like this, but make it lighter. So then when you come back like this, those tones even out. When you come over here, just work carefully, that's all. And the tone will even out, so that you don't get that outline around this little portion of the hand, and there, and all the way around your paper. Pretty important. So I think if we move that out the screen there like that, it will look like a continual thing. So once it's framed, you've obviously now cut off that little edge over there, and you'll look complete. Alright, so let's go back to over here. Alrighty guys, so good luck drawing your hands, and my challenge again, draw your own hand. I'd love to see what your hand drawing looks like on the forum. Now obviously do all sorts of different angles and stuff, because it's super good practice for that shadings. I tell you, if you can draw a hand like perfect, man, I tell you, you've got your shading sorted. You'll never battle with any shading again after that. Alright, so Have a wonderful week. Next week we're going to complete our portrait course by doing a portrait Q&A. So I'm going to show you how to go from realistic like we've been doing now to ultra realistic. How to get those little sweat holes and all those kind of things to that super detail that you always see. I want to show you how to do that next week, and a bunch of other little questions that you've posted on the forum. We'll answer them, like how to do the dark skin, etc. Alright, have a wonderful week. Cheerio!